So you want to trademark the name and logo for your podcast, but you're just not sure how to go about it. Where do you start? You've invested a lot of time, money, and energy into starting a podcast to spread the message about your business. Make sure you protect the name, the slogan, the logo associated with your podcast, and do it in the right way. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, my name is Marcella Dominguez. I have been helping small and medium-sized companies protect their brands online and also offline. Today we're talking about how to protect your podcast name or your podcast brand. You should be referring to your business as a brand because moving forward, you need to be thinking about how you want your brand to make your customers feel. Now, I go into more detail about this topic in another video. For purposes of this video, I just really want to emphasize that you should be thinking about your business name, logo, slogan, and tagline in terms of a bigger picture, which would be your brand. So we're going to talk about how to protect your podcast brand name, logo, slogan, and tagline. Now, the answer might surprise you, but you would actually protect it in the same way that you would protect any other brand. So if you've watched my previous videos, then you know that you need to be going to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, that is uspto.gov. And there you will be able to fill out a trademark application. Now, the process can be daunting for some people because, well, there are a lot of terms that you just might not understand. So we created a DIY trademark form that you can fill out yourself, and you can find it by scrolling down into the description below this video. But I want to first find out from you. Are you interested in protecting your podcast name? Are you interested in protecting your podcast logo or your podcast slogan or tagline? What is it that is associated with your podcast that you really want to protect? Now, you don't just have to choose one of those three things that I mentioned. You can choose all three of them. So if you choose to move forward with our law firm, we will take a look at your business assets, whether it's a URL, whether it's your Libsyn host, or whatever your podcast host is. We will take a look at it and see what you have on there that is protectable. Maybe there's something that you say really often in your podcast episodes that kind of becomes catchy and your listeners catch on, and now that's something that they're repeating. That is also something that could be protectable. So there are lots of things that you're probably not thinking about if you've already established your podcast. Now, if you haven't established your podcast already, maybe you're thinking of something that you can continually say that will become associated with your brand. So not only will you be registering your podcast name or the podcast logo, maybe you will have started a trend with whatever it is that repeatable statement is, or that repeatable slogan becomes. I want to show you a list of other trademarks associated with podcasts that are now registered. This will give you an idea of how people are using the mark, what exactly people are registering with regard to their respective podcast. The take-home message from this video is that yes, you can be protecting your podcast name in the same way that you would protect any other brand. You shouldn't look at this as, I'm just trademarking my podcast name. That's it. No, in essence, the bigger picture is that you are protecting your brand. So you're protecting the brand either as a podcast name or your clothing brand or your service-based business or your product-based business. So if you have a podcast name, a podcast logo, or a podcast slogan that you want protected, make sure you scroll down into the description below where we have more information about how you can move forward with that process. But I also want you to tell me in the comments, what is your podcast name? Tell me where I can listen to it, because guess what? I do look in those comments. I do read what you are posting. So I want to take a listen to your podcast. I want to see what kind of content you're putting out there. And I also want to say kudos to you for taking that first step, or those first couple of steps if you already have a couple of podcast episodes out. I know that it can sort of be a daunting process for some people because they don't really know how to start. They don't know where to begin, what resources to use, what podcast host should I use, what equipment do I need, can I just use an iPhone, how do I share it, how do I market it? And so anyway, there are a million questions that you could be asking yourself that might prevent some of you from starting. But for those of you that have taken the step and have taken those initial leaps, then I applaud you. My goal as a lawyer is not only to support your brand from a legal perspective, but I also love applauding entrepreneurs who have taken those first couple of steps to put their brand out there for everybody to watch, listen to, and basically absorb and make your brand become part of somebody else's life on an everyday basis. We all have something we can teach to the masses. So again, I applaud you, and make sure you scroll down into the description below. For those of you that don't know, I have also put out my own podcast, which has been out for a couple of months now. So I invite you to also listen to it. It is called The AM Show for Entrepreneurs, for ambitious and motivated business owners who just want to learn more business tips from those who have already been there and done that. If you want to fast track your road to success, then make sure you take a listen. We have interviewed entrepreneurs like Jason Pfeiffer, who is editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. We have interviewed Dave Hollis from the Hollis Company. We have also interviewed former editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine in the Czech Republic. We have interviewed Linda Hollander, who teaches you how to get corporate sponsors for your brand. So I promise you that there's going to be some information that you will find valuable because you didn't know it before you started watching or listening to my podcast episodes. So if you go to the Trademark electronic search system, which if you just do a Google search for TESS on Google and the word trademark, then you will come up with the Trademark electronic search system, and you can use this to look for the word podcast. When you type that word in, you're going to see the hundreds of applicants that are also trying to get their podcast name registered. So you would not be the only one. It is fascinating to go through every single one of these. So I'll just read you some of them. We have Podcasts for Life. We have Killer Podcasts. We have the Sunset Single Player Podcast. We have Cousin and Sons Podcast, the Love Lab Podcast. And so again, when you do a search on tests, it is not indicative of the ones that have been registered, but it is indicative of the number of people who are currently trying to get a registration for their podcast. So I want you to protect your podcast brand just the same way that these hundreds of entrepreneurs are trying to do the same thing. And yes, you would go about it in the same way. Now, somebody's application that I was curious to look up was John Lee Dumas. Now, if you listen to podcasts, then you're probably familiar with Entrepreneur on Fire. So I asked myself, well, surely he registered his podcast name because it is so big. He has millions of listeners. And what I found was an application for Entrepreneur on Fire by John Lee Dumas. However, I was disappointed to see that he let this trademark go into abandonment. So it was never actually registered. It had a problem halfway through. And instead of responding to it, he just let it go abandoned. So Entrepreneur on Fire is actually not registered. John Lee Dumas, you can give me a call and I'd be more than happy to help you. And I do think that maybe he let it go into abandonment because he didn't initially register it the right way. Now, if you want more details on how to properly register your trademark application, then make sure you scroll down to the description below where I provide an application for you that's very, very easy to walk through. Now, all this to say that I applaud you, and if you are looking for more information on how to actually start your podcast, but you are not quite ready to jump on registering the trademark for your podcast, then I also offer a course on how to start your own podcast. It is so easy, and I encourage you to start your own podcast because I promise you that you know something that someone else doesn't, and they need to know that information. I think we really take for granted our own knowledge. We know things that other people don't. We are at least one step ahead of some people who may not have even started, who may not know how to do something that they've been wanting to do for a long time. So because I started this podcast and because I knew that, wow, if an attorney who knows nothing about, the technical equipment or the technicalities of using a host for a podcast, and then distributing it to different platforms. If I could learn it, then I know that you can learn it too, but I wanted to make it easy for you. And that's why I created my simple and inexpensive course on how to start your own podcast. I hope this video was helpful, and if so, give me a thumbs up, but please make sure to hit the notifications so you can be notified of when I release more videos just like this one. Hasta luego!